Hey, friend, welcome to Giant Chat, episode 8. I want to give a little shout out to my friends Alan Benjamin, Frank Long, Jacob Feldman, all the Gentle Giant guys that have waited for this episode. And tonight's a special night. I've got a special guest. It's Kevin Dodson of the Madrigal Project. His new album is coming out in October. He's a writer, composer, he's a vocalist, drummer, and he's a huge Gentle Giant fan, which is how we connected. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much for having me.
I tell you, we've been talking about this for about a year. I was familiar with I on the Gentle Giant website. They have a list of the fans
Right.
of Gentle Giant that have done something, and I found out about Madrigal. Madrigal it began as a band in the 1970s, and in 1988 they came out with their first album, Waiting. You got a copy of it, Kevin? He's got a
Yeah,
copy
it's
of it
right
right
here.
here.
And this is actually in the or I don't, it's not called gatefold, but I forgot what they called this, the something pack, the Digipack, I believe it was
There you
called.
go.
There it is.
It was featured on Progressive Archives. It got some really good reviews. And then 1996 followed up with On My Hands.
That's the On My Hands. I don't know if it's too much glare.
We could see it. Yep.
On My Hands there.
So,
Yes.
but the band itself kind of came to an end. And as they say, Kevin, I think you could identify with this. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, especially in Prague. It's a
There,
hard road to
it's
get.
a very hard road and something that I think, as yet has been articulated in a manner in which it really, really describes what we musicians, especially people who operate on the outside of the circle, the pop commercial realm. It's just hard, to do it. But
Well, Gentle
I
Giant
did it.
found that out. Gentle Giant found that out. I mean,
Oh
it
yeah,
wasn't easy. It doesn't matter how great your music is, but if you don't have the right people on tour, if you don't have the exposure, if you don't have the backing of the record company, it's tough. But it's those are albums that I would suggest if you haven't gotten a chance to look at those. I have links to those on my YouTube channel here. Waiting in on my hands, little live bits of Madrigal in the 1990s, Kevin playing, and so tell me, you had Chuck Swanson. He's going to be on this 11th hour. He was with
yeah,
you on my hands. He plays
yes it was.
saxophone and flute, correct?
Came out with another model of it, and it didn't sound as good. But anyway, I digress. I
Well,
don't know
the
where
thing
I'm going with this. Anyway,
the thing about Madrigal is that you know any band. I asked you, are you a Happy the Man fan?
you know what? Here, I'll tell you the true story about that. I am a
Mhm.
recent Happy the Man fan
Oh
and
man.
now own just about everything they've ever recorded. And the way I became a Happy the Man fan is through Adam Holzman.
Okay.
Um, Adam said to me one day, your voice kind of reminds me of the guy in in Happy the Man. He said your voice kind of sounds like the guy in Happy the Man. And anyway, so I checked it out. I got The Muse Awakens,
Oh
if
yeah,
I'm
that
not.
was her. Yeah, that was 2014, I believe. Back here on the wall,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
Crafty
yes,
Hands.
yes, yes. I
Yeah.
got that one first, and the thing of it is I ended up going and getting their earlier ones as
Mhm.
well because Adam had told me that he was a huge fan of Kit, and he'll have to excuse me. I can't remember his last name. I can't remember, how many hands, I mean fingers. I mean, yeah, uh, but I know that Adam loves the way he plays. And
Oh
when
yeah.
I heard Happy the Man, I went, where have I been?
There's
These guys are amazing. And they're an American band. And they're amazing.
they
And
are.
I found out they almost became Peter Gabriel's band.
Yes, that's right. I had you got to watch the interview with Stanley Whitaker on.
Yes.
Yep. So what I was going to say was is that bands like Happy the Man had the same issue that you had. Madrigal came in at a time when Prague was just leaving fashion. You had the punk anti-Prague movement And anything after about 1975, it was tough.
Oh,
And you
absolutely.
know that.
Like
But
overnight too, like
oh,
overnight, you
so,
know. Um,
that was about the time, you know, Gentle Giant began to wind down. I'm a fan of all their albums, but they began to wind down. It was a tough time for prog, but I believe that the On My Hands and Waiting, it was, to me, it came across like it was something that was in you. Who cares what is going on around me? This is music that I love. And you were influenced by Yes and Gentle Giant and Jethro Tull and all them. You're a King Crimson fan. You know, um, that was kind of something like you didn't care about the times, even in the 1990s. Prog was way out of fashion, but it's like you made some great music, and I think Waiting and On My Hands are albums that deserve a second look. You can find it on Apple Music.
in the music industry like I do now, and
Yeah,
have certain things in place with publishing and what have you. So a lot of money fell through the cracks. But
yeah,
what we've talked about is taking this, not only redoing them. I don't. I no longer have the original 8 track tapes of the Madrigal first one, the Waiting, but I do of On My Hands, and it was all done on that Fostex 8 track player right
that's
there.
crazy.
It was all done on that player, which there were tape source limitations. People ask me, how do I feel about, and now there's two different ways. As an artist, I feel very good about it. I thought that the songwriting and what I was doing at the time was where I was at. The production for me is a little less than what I would. I mean, if I were doing these records now, they would sound a lot different than they
Yeah, well,
do.
Gentle Giant. I mean, they just had Steven Wilson remix Interview, and he remixed The Missing Piece.
Yeah,
And while I'm at it, I want to put a plug out to gentlegiantband.com where you can get these awesome t-shirts. Okay. But yep. And but Gentle Giant themselves, that it was an uphill climb for them. But
yeah, like
again,
you said, right around, well, the summer of '77 is when Madrigal first started out, and like I said earlier, it seemed like overnight we were dinosaurs, and we were only 18 years old. People
yeah,
were, I remember it seemed like, progressive rock was the bastard stepchild of rock and roll or something. You couldn't talk about it. If you even mentioned it in
yeah,
groups, people would be like, "Oh, that dinosaur old." In fact, the first album, the Waiting album, I had an opportunity to meet with John Poneman from Sub Pop. He was the founder of Sub Pop, and it was around the time of Nirvana and Mudhoney and all of those groups. And of course, me and my young, you know, sort of happy ignorance had no idea that the music I was playing was the enemy. And
yeah.
so, we drove around Spokane playing it in his car, and he didn't say a word. He was just silent, didn't say a word. And, it was like one of those, the air sucked out of the car, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh God, what's going to happen? He pulls the car and he goes, this has absolutely nothing to do with anything I ever want to have anything to do with. Thank you very much. And I went, you're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Poneman. You can let me off at the next corner. Uh, Again, at the time I was actually blissfully ignorant to the fact that prog rock was that unpopular. It got to a point where you'd go into a record stop show or a record store and you'd have to a record shop, and you'd have to say, yeah, I'll take some of the Eagles over there and some. Go ahead and give me some Black Sabbath. I still got a little metal in me, and give me. And then you'd reach around the corner and go, "You got any prog?"
Oh
You know,
man. It's like
then
buying a
he
Playboy
handed you in a
magazine or
brown
something.
paper bag underneath the counter, and you'd walk out going, "Okay, I got my
Oh
got
man.
my prog." So it was a really hard time. Madrigal found itself in 1977 writing music that no one essentially had any interest in. But of course, the love of the music is always the winner.
Yeah.
At least has been for me. But there you go.
Well, on their first album, uh, Gentle Giant said, "We're going to make this music even if it's incredibly unpopular." And that's how you and I connected. It was maybe a year or so ago.
Yeah.
I'd looked up the Madrigal albums, and I was like, "Hey, Kevin, we friended on Facebook, and you told me, look, I got a new album coming out, and it's going to flip your lid." So let me I want to talk about the 11th hour. I want to talk about who's on it, but first of all, Gentle Giant. You got to see them on the Yes Relayer tour. Is that true?
It's amazing. I still have hair on my head because I was pulling it out from excitement. Yeah, I saw him on the Relayer tour, and didn't have time. I was going to Google it and figure out what exact, date and year it was, but it was at the Spokane Coliseum. Spokane, that's in Washington State for those who, we're in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah,
Anyway,
up in the
uh,
corner. Yep.
yeah, it's like, you drive through and you sneeze, you don't see it. Uh, so, um, you know, uh, uh, when I was trying to find out what the date was, but it was at the Spokane Coliseum and it was the Relayer tour. So obviously, Yes fans or any of your prog fans watching this can look it up and find out. But yeah, Gentle Giant opened for him, and I I was standing up, going, "What? This is incredible! What is happening here? Look at that! They're playing nine different instruments each." It just blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. And I look around and everybody else is sitting on their hands going, "Yes!"
Oh, I know.
And so, and I thought, you guys are missing it here. This is really incredible. I believe I had, which album did I have at that time? I had one of their albums. It's been so long. Uh, I want to say, because of the year that I went and saw them, it was probably Freehand. In fact, it was Freehand. I heard Freehand, and to be honest with you, I went back in time and got, Three Friends and In a Glass House, and oh my favorite, oh my God, my favorite is Power and the Glory. Oh my God. To me, that is one of the quintessential uh uh, you know, progressive rock concept albums. It's and it's timeless because it speaks to, you know, the
Nowadays.
dare I say political climate, no
Yeah.
matter when,
Yeah.
no matter what era you happen to be in. And the lyrics are amazing, and there's a lot of Carrie Minier. I'm a huge Carrie Minier voice fan. I just love that sweet little voice. It's just wispy and
Oh yeah.
uh, it's I just love his voice, and of course Carrie Minier was a major player in that band. He was one of the major writers along with the Shulman brothers, of course. But man, I mean, I think that Gentle Giant are probably the most unsung, least accoladed, if there's a word. I think I just made up a word, Kirk.
Yeah.
Accolade. The next album will be called Accoladed. So I just think that they were ahead of their time, and back then, being a musician, I know what it's like to haul around a B3 organ and a Leslie. I know what it's like to try to emulate the sounds from a record when you have a monophonic Moog synthesizer. You have, a Fender Rhodes. Half the time, no acoustic piano unless you're taking one with you. Good luck. Bring a tuner with you.
Yeah.
And, it's just like the technology was so limiting, but in a way, that was what made it so incredible, was that you knew if you put on a Gentle Giant album back then, you knew they weren't fooling you with samples and loops and
Yeah.
that. You knew these guys are playing this.
Yeah.
They had to because the technology was such, you didn't have a choice. You had to play it. You had to
Do
be able to
you
play it.
do you
And
know of
then
any?
what amazed me was how many instruments they each played.
I was going to ask you. 45. 45 is what I know of their members. It's like, do you know of any band that can do that? It's incredible. So
No,
you saw when you went to see them with Yes. Was
Yeah.
it almost like who's this other guy and you went to go see Yes and it was just a surprise?
No, I knew of them. Like I say, I had the Freehand album, which
Okay.
blew my mind, and I was keen on them.
Okay.
I went to the show because I obviously I want to see Yes, and I
Yeah.
was really into the Relayer album at that time too, because Patrick Moraz
Yeah.
just like changed that whole vibe, kind of brought this Italian fusion kind of
Mhm.
thing to it, and it was beautiful. And I thought that that was a great record. But I knew about Gentle Giant, but when they came out and started playing, it was like, almost like like heart stopping almost, like the hairs on the back of my neck going up, and chills, goosebumps, and just like, what? And then, here's Carrie Minier, all of a sudden he gets up and he goes over and picks up a cello,
Yeah.
and then you see Ray Shulman put his bass down and pick up a violin,
Yeah.
and then he picks up a trumpet, and then and then they're all playing drums, and then it's just uh, they were so far beyond anything happening at the time, and quite frankly, they're beyond anything that's happening anymore, in my humble
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
Just what I think.
Well, so let me ask you, uh, John Weathers, as a drummer, I mean, you have to appreciate how hard that would be for him to come in as kind of the kind of drummer he was, and then okay, play something that goes with this. I mean, that would just
The
be
first thing about John Weathers, and I'll say this in a manner, and I'll give you another analogy of it. John Weathers was the perfect drummer for them. Why? He knew how to stay out of the way, but yet color it with ornaments of drumming and percussion that were unique to him. You know, he never really was very flashy, but he knew how to. I mean, because you've got these guys playing compound meter and metric modulation, and everybody's playing at a different time signature. If you had the drummer going,
yeah,
would just be, you'd be going, "Where's one?
yeah,
What's happening?" So him coming in and just laying down that solid foundation,
yeah. Oh,
you know, just, mm, mm. And that's what that band needed. Nothing against Malcolm or
oh yeah, Malcolm's great.
Malcolm's,
Yeah,
and when he came into Three Friends, the
yeah.
new incarnation with Gary, unbelievable. I mean, I think he's a fantastic drummer.
Did you get to
Uh,
see? Did you get to see Three Friends?
yeah, well, not live, but I've seen him, online several
Hmm.
times.
Yeah. Okay.
When we were doing this album, I wanted to have. When I talked to Billy, Billy said that every year they do a like a compilation album, kind of I guess it's a tribute of sorts to Prague
Hmm.
stuff. And I don't know if it's almost every year, but he said that Gary was involved in one of the projects and that he normally just does not do that. The only other album I know of that he sat in on was Eddie Jobson's Zinc album. But um, he said, "Yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of Gary, and I don't even have his phone number anymore. I can't get a hold of him." And I asked him, I said, "Well, do you think he would consider playing guitar?" So I mean, I got you, you know. Uh, and he said, "We could try." And Gary, if you're out there, I'm sorry. My wife put me up to it. Okay, my wife went out and found Gary's home phone number in the Midwest. He lives in, and 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 she kept saying, "You look, what do you got to lose? What the worst that could happen? He'll say no, and I'm like, yeah, but it's an invasion of the man's
So
personal.
you actually wanted to have Gary Green in on this.
I absolutely would have loved to have had Gary Green on
Do you
that record.
do you see the picture up there? That I got
Yeah,
that signed. I live, I want to say 90 miles away from it.
you're
And
kidding me.
You'll have to look up on my YouTube channel. I was there at when he got, if you can see it, the star on the Walk of Fame there in Princeton.
I did see something about the Walk of Fame thing. The
That
sort of
was
Walk
me taking
of-
that
Oh, really?
video. Yeah, I got to.
Really?
He is the nicest guy. He had some hair in his tongue or something. Yeah. He was talking to me and telling me these jokes and stuff. I got to meet his wife. He's just the most awesome guy.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
was so down to earth every time I saw an interview with him
oh
or see him
man.
talk. He was just so, and that's what made me think, well, maybe it's okay. So I called,
Oh yeah.
and no one answered, of course, and but it was obviously Gary's voice. I recognized his voice on the answering machine, and I, sheepishly and meekly said, who I was and who was
Oh
I was working with on this record, and gosh, I would just be honored and humbled and and just it would just be a dream come true to have you actually play guitar because I was looking for what Gary brought to the Giant, which was he brought the kind of the bluesy soul rock thing. That's what to me anyway. I could be wrong, but he's sort of a blues based guitar player, and he's got that rock thing that he brings to this potpourri of
yeah, I know.
genres that are flying around.
He's the most down to earth guy, but I mean, I just think he's so underrated. He's just a brilliant guitarist,
He
and he's humble. I mean, we were talking at the Walk of Fame ceremony. They mentioned him as the legendary guitarist, and he kind of got red faced. He's just a down to earth guy. He plays with some of the guys there in town at the guitar shop. You would just,
right.
um, but anyway,
Yeah, I
um,
saw an interview where he said, I play with the local players around here. I go and I do shows around. And I'm
yeah,
thinking, well, where were you 20 years ago when I was looking? Anyway,
yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you and I, that's how we connected about Gentle Giant. And you told me, look, I've got an album coming out, the Madrigal Project, the 11th Hour. And here's something that's really exciting about this. Let's talk about who's on this album. Adam Holzman of Stephen Wilson and Miles Davis. You've got Jane Gedder of the Jane Gedder Premonition on guitar. You have Billy Sherwood of Yes and Asia and Circa. You've got Oliver Wakeman of Yes and the Straubs. I mean, for crying out loud, that's to me. Now you've got Charles Swanson on sax. You've got Harry Fix on
that's,
vocals.
excuse me, that's the Charles Swanson.
I'm sorry,
Not-
the Charles Swanson
Yeah.
on sax, and you've got Harry Fix. He's doing the counterpoint vocals there with you, and John Van Hout on bass. But I mean, there's going to be people. This is the big draw that Billy Sherwood and Oliver are on this album. There's going to be Yes fans that are going to be going, "What? This is a big deal." And
And
this album,
for me as an artist, that's a double-edged sword because there's part of me that is in anticipation of a fair amount of slagging or
no,
a fair amount of praise. I hope
no,
the thing of it is that those guys brought an element to this record, Kirk, that I can't even describe. It elevated this record to a whole, and I knew it would, and I knew when we got about halfway through the record, I looked at John, who was sitting right here next to me, and I said, this is an ongoing concern now. You know, this isn't just a little prog band from Spokane, and I'm actually from a little town southwest of here called Spangle. Um, I'm a farm boy. I'm from Spangle, a town of about 250 people. I used to hang out down there at the Pea Growers Association. We used to cruise the 4-H for babes, throw stuff off the bridge, for
sure,
fun. That was a Saturday night or moonshine or what. No, actually, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was, I was a kind of sort of born in a small town country sort of thing, but I ended up moving to Spokane, when I was quite young. So, but I joke about, yeah, who cares about a drummer, singer, songwriter from Spangle? It's a
well, I
joke.
will say this. Let me just give you some props here. I know that maybe are being humble here, but this album, I've had a lot of people send me music, but this one is just spectacular. I love this. You told me when you were going to send me a copy. I'm probably one of the few that have gotten to hear this, and I can't. I've been sharing it with. I've reached out to Pete Pardo. I've reached out to people, YouTubers that I know. I said, look, you've got to pay attention to this. This is special, and the reason it's special is it's like it has
Kurt, thank you so much.
everything that makes prog great. Number one is that on the first listen, you're like this. It's almost too much to take in, but by about the second or third listen, it's got its hooks in you. I remember listening to Close to the Edge and Fragile and Octopus and stuff, and the first time you listen to it, it's like you don't quite get it, but then it's like it gets you. This album, I have listened to this just in the last week 7 times, and I'm like I want to listen to it again. This is great. Um, it's meant to be listened. It's not exactly a concept album, but it's not meant to
No,
be. Here's a
not
song,
purist.
here's a song, here's a song. It's meant to be listened kind of like Three Friends was. You sit
Yes.
down, you listen, and it's got the transitions in between songs. It's got a theme. It's not exactly a concept album, but this is just brilliant. I can't say enough about it.
Well, Kirk, just I can't tell you, how that makes me feel, because I've been in obscurity for so long, and the fact that my music can actually, touch another human being like that is the most humbling thing, and also the reason I do it. Because I want other people to experience what I experienced at 15 when I first heard Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and went,
Yeah.
like, uh, you know, or the first time I heard The Power and the Glory, or the first time I heard any of these amazing people. And the fact that you give me those accolades, it actually, I don't mind saying it, it's very emotional for me because I never thought I'd ever have these chances in my career. I thought, the song I'm No One is sort of a chronicling thing of that, of, being in this studio and thinking, I'm no one, you know,
Well,
but
I think if you believe in something, if you have something within you, and people like Happy the Man, I talked to Stanley Whitaker, and when he comes out with music, it's because there's something in him. It's like it comes to you, and it's like I have to share this,
yes,
okay?
yes.
And I think that's what great prog is. This goes.
You're so right. You're
This is
so right.
not.
You
This
know,
is not.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. And it isn't a purist. You're right. It's not a purist concept album. However, it is autobiographical to a certain degree. Almost every song, in fact, I might even just say every song in some way is, uh, you know, a narrative on something very, very important, very earth-shattering in my life over the course of, my whole life. And I wrote the lyrics with the thought in mind that, I, I I've always been a huge fan of Peter Hamel because I've always thought that Peter Hamel, actually both Peters, the two Peters, Peter Hamel and Peter Gabriel,
Yeah.
are my favorite lyricists, and they always were able to draw me in to a high concept, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's something that there's a lot of read between the lines, sure, but there's also a high concept behind it.
Mhm.
That's what always impressed me about Peter Hamill, and he always, not always, but very often dealt with internal, personal, in inside yourself, kind of monologue-ish kind of stuff of
Sure.
yourself, and I that is just fascinating to me. And I hoped when I wrote the lyrics that I could channel him to a certain degree. I did the best I could.
Well,
We'll see how that.
no, but to me, the concept came, it did seem my autobiographical as for someone that had played in a band and had gotten, just not getting the recognition, hadn't gotten paid for what they did, but, damn it, I'm going to make this anyway. And coming into the years that where everybody's on their cell phones and social media, from somebody who's been in a band since 1970, what, seven, I think, till
Well,
now.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
about,
Well, actually, I was in bands from the time I was 13, which would have been 1972.
yeah.
But I wasn't ever in an original band that I wrote for until Madrigal in 1977. I was 18.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right, folks. I'm 65 years old.
Oh,
I'm
but
an old.
it sounded like somebody that was in this current era, almost having to deal with the franticness of everything and, wanting to make music and having something to say, but not feeling like almost like, what do I do here? It's you're talking about YouTube where people are just downloading thousands of videos and thousands of songs, but it seems very personal. So
Very personal, and it also we live in a time of diminished attention spans, and what you said earlier is so true about how I'd like people to experience this record. It's one of those records I feel I've always wanted it to be, and I want people to play this record from beginning to end because it's really all one statement. It's like I want it to be like the way we used to listen to records, you and I, back in the 70s and early 80s. It was like an event. You'd buy this record and you'd find this gem and you'd get home and
uh,
the smell of the new record and you'd put it on and you knew what you were going to be doing for the next hour. You were not going to be distracted.
yeah,
You're in this world. People don't listen to music like that. In fact, you would never get together with your friends and go, "Hey, let's listen to side one of Dark Side of the Moon and then go play football."
mhm.
It just never happened like that.
Or
Everybody had to hear
conversely,
the whole thing.
yeah, or conversely say, hey, let's sit and listen to the Beatles for an hour. Um, you know, you're not going to do that. But
No,
I'll tell you a story that I've told this story before, and I even talked to my mom about that today. The way I got introduced to progressive rock was my mom took me to the Lincoln Library downtown here, and they had a record section you could collect, take them home.
right.
And I was like, oh, what's this big green and blue album? That's weird. It's got a world with the flying something or other on there. I'll take it home. It was the Yes Fragile album. I was 9. And I opened it up. It had the great big fold out insert with, sharp distance, heart of the sunrise. And I remember that day. I remember where I was. And I
Wow.
sat down and I played that. And then I flipped the record over and played the other. I could remember that day, you know, because that kind of music made an impact on me. And
Yes.
I can honestly say that this album, I know you're in a sea of competitors out there, but I'm glad you got Billy and I'm glad you got Oliver and Jane and Adam on this because I hope this album gets the attention it deserves. I really do. This is great. So, well,
Thank you.
and you can tell that this is not some guy going, "Hey, how can I make some cash?" This is somebody that had something to say, you
It's
know?
also not a record that and I hope this doesn't get interpreted wrong because, there are players out there that are influences of mine, Vinnie Colaiuta, Rod Morgenstein, Bill Bruford, of course. There's a million of them. Some that you might not think, like Barrymore Barlow. There's just a lot of drummers that are influences on me, but what I've kind of noticed lately is there's a bit more emphasis on technique and
Drum
uh,
fills and
yeah, showing everything you can do, everything you learned at Berkeley in, 32 bars. And I think that something's lost on that. You know, I don't think that I really don't think anybody when they were I don't think the guys in Genesis when they got together to do Lamb Lies Down on Broadway thought, okay, guys, let's make sure that this record is super technical. Let's make it really
No,
math-like. Let's just be really
no,
technical with everything. You know, they didn't ever write like that. They
no.
wrote with, like you said earlier, you have something in you. You have to have something to say, and it has to be of great paramount interest to you and meaning to you. It's got to come from here,
Yeah.
you know. And too much to me coming from here, and that's great. And I soak it all in, and I love it all. I love it all. On the Cruise to the Edge, there wasn't one band that I didn't think was just amazing. The only problem I had was I kept walking around going, my stuff doesn't sound anything like this. I think I'm going to get slagged. People are going to kill me. You
No.
know, I thought it was, I actually thought it was going to be a detriment that I wasn't going to fit in with, you know, the the prog world, you know, right away they'd reject me because I didn't, you know, follow the thing. But and
Well,
I
this
hope that I might want to edit this out because there's probably a
no,
lot of players out there that are going to say, well, you arrogant SOB. Who do you think you, you know, it's like,
no. I
no, it's not that. It's not what I mean. I mean, what I mean is these guys are great players and they should, you know, show what they can do. I mean, that's of course, part of it, but it's not all of it, I guess is what I'm saying, you
Well,
know.
you're the 11th hour doesn't come across like that. What it comes across to me as it's got what you want in a prog album. You want to have, I mean, for me personally, people of my generation, definitely, if you grew up listening to Yes and Gentle Giant, you want the sound, and this album has the sound. I told you, I said immediately, as soon as Oliver started playing, I'm like, that's a Wakeman. I can tell.
Yeah, I
He
know.
plays,
The
he
fruit
plays like
don't
his
fall too far from the tree, does it?
no, he plays like his dad. And I
And
mean,
although I will say this, you can hear Rick in him, but Oliver has his own.
yeah.
I can't really put my finger on it yet. I'm still trying to put my finger on it, but it's an approach. It's a sensitivity of a different nature or something. That's probably not it. I really gotta find it because I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I said, "Yeah, you know, he kind of sounds like his dad, but he's his own guy, man. He does his own thing with it. I don't know how to say it. He just, you know,
He's
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 a
unique.
fantastic player."
So let me when did you start composing this? I mean, when did the original
Oh, there's the
composition start?
$40 million question. Well, I started the first song in 1817, and no, the truth of the matter is, I was talking about the 8 track earlier. There are 3 songs on this record. I believe it's 3 songs. Let me make sure of that. I got to check my own stats.
Fine.
Yes, three songs that came from. This is hard to talk about because I'm afraid people are going to go, you mean it took you 25 years to write? No, it didn't take 25 years to write a song. What happened was songs like Canvas, for instance,
Mhm.
appeared in like 1996 when I was going to college. And I wrote the song, recorded it on the little 8 track over there. And then, like so many songs that I was writing at the time, it got kind of, you know, filed away, you know, along with a bunch of other songs I was writing. One of them was 11th Hour, believe it or not. Another one was Boat 5, which actually was called Paradise back then and was co-written by me and Dave Siebert, who that there's a whole we could go into a story about that at another time because it's very, very deep. But yeah, I think that you know it's hard to tell people how long ago these things started because it makes them think that. But so the song was put away, and then probably 10 or 15 years later, when I had moved from my other house to here, uh, I was going through some stuff, and I said, well, I think I'd like to pull that out and massage it, mold it, fix it, do some things with it. And so uh, they developed over a rather long period of time, but not with steady. Like it's not like I got up every day and worked on the song every day, or even within a 4 or 5, 10 year span. So the songs, some of them started that far ago. Some of them, like Something of It and Breaking August and Sisters, and Maude Frantic and Question of Weight and Matter, those are all songs that I wrote fairly recently. In fact, you want to know what happened? This is so funny. So I got these guys playing on all these songs of mine, and we're in here producing them, and we're just giddy, and we're just And one day I started, because we knew we were going to do vinyl, I started adding up the time, and I went, "Oh no, we got we have too much material here, John. We can't fit this on a single album." So we had this big meeting with everyone and talking about, well, what song could we cut, or what songs we would have had to probably cut two, and we'd come to a song and go and talk about it, and everyone would go, "Well, you can't lose that song, and you
Yeah.
can't, And so it ended up being we just decided, well, I guess we're doing a double album, but we were 17 minutes short, so I wrote Something of It, and Something of It started out as about a 24 and a half minute song. You'll find out with a lot of people that know me, my jacket, my moniker is, yeah, he writes long songs. You know, I mean, everybody, people go, yeah, I got an 8 minute song. I go, that's about enough time for my intro. Okay,
Yeah.
no. But so, I wrote this song, and there was an experience that I had in England when I first got off the plane in Manchester. My buddy Yanni takes me to a pub, and there's this band playing, and they're a Ramstein tribute band.
Mhm.
The guy comes out with fire in his hands, and it was cool. It was, I mean, I was just digging it. Well, I'd only been in England for a couple hours. I go into the loo. I'm going to the loo, and I went in there, and I'm doing what people do in there, or most people. I don't know. Some people might do different. Anyway, I'm in there, and all of a sudden the room fills up with, like, I don't know if they were rugby players or soccer, or I don't know what they were, because they were Scottish and their accents were so thick I couldn't understand a word they were saying, and there was about 15 of them. And I thought, I'm standing there going, no, I'm gonna get my ass kicked first thing. I go, how could this be? I was, this can't happen. But they pretty much ignored me, but they were slamming each other up against the wall. And every now and then, the only thing I could make out was go, oh, you watching my so move it, or something like that,
Something
like,
of it.
so move it, hey, so move it, And I somehow sneaked around the walls, get around these guys, because boy, I'm about to be killed. And I got out, and I thought, oh, great. But that stuck with me. And so I thought I'm going to write this song, and I didn't have a working title for it, so I just called it "So Move It," because I thought, well, I'm going to make something of it, so make something of it, And I sent it the 24-minute version of it to Adam, and said, I'd like you to work with me on this in terms of arrangement, and find and help me to put this together in a manner that you think will work. Send it to him, and I get an email back from. I get this email. He goes, "Well, Kevin, you've got about enough material in this one song for 3 albums." I'm like, okay. He goes, "Look, you've got some amazing themes in here, but most of them, a few of them got expanded on, but a lot of them you just sort of briefly hit them and then you move on to the." And I said, yeah, that was sort of purposeful, because I was trying to find the strong parts, and then I was going to go back and develop them. And he goes, well, and he sends me this. Oh, where is it? I know it's in here somewhere. Uh, oh, I've got to find it because it's so cool. I still have it. I'll probably keep it forever. Well, I can't find it right now, but anyway, it's this long uh, by time code. This section is really good. I think you should elongate it, write some lyrics. This section's really good. Maybe not for this piece. This section, throw it away. You know, it was that kind of a process, and so I came out with uh, I think there's five themes in that song, maybe five,
Mhm.
and then went to work on that. And the night that I started to write the lyrics, this is true. I mean, I wouldn't lie to you, prog folks out there. I thought, well, and I normally have a very distinct idea of what I'm writing about lyrically, because as I said earlier, with when you got a guy like Peter Hamill as your mentor, you don't just start writing about, just anyway.
Anything.
So I thought, well, I don't know. I'm just gonna. I don't know what I have in mind here. I guess I'll just do stream of consciousness and we'll see what happens. So I start to write and I get about four verses in, of which later got changed quite a bit. But I got about four verses in and then looked down and started reading it and I suddenly realized this is the story of Madrigal.
Mm.
I'm writing subconsciously the story of Madrigal. And it made sense to keep the title Something of It because all through the struggles of this band from 1977 to now, you know, it's always been a situation for me, and I don't mean anything against anybody else, but always you seem to always come down to me, a singular thing, the factor that I was the driving factor in Madrigal, and I kept being the common denominator, and I had to struggle through all these things, and so that's why the lyrics where it goes, "Who was this staid yet unbridled man?" So I was unbridled because I could write and I could do what I did, but I was stayed, because nothing going on. But and I could go through every lyric and give you my interpretation of it, but that would ruin the song for you folks. I want you to interpret it your own way. But uh, I just knew, that was what it was, and so that gave me the impetus to flush it out more as that. And I thought that's perfect because every song on here is of an autobiographical nature, essentially. So I thought, this is really. There's been so many things like that, Kirk, in the making of this record that were, like I said earlier, if you were to look at this project on paper, you'd say this can't work. I'm a producer, uh, engineer guy that I couldn't be in London, I couldn't be in New York to produce, I couldn't be in L.A. And so you would think that these songs, I don't know how many people out there know what a stem is, but stems are on a multi-track. You say you've got drums, keyboards, guitars, and bass. If you want to make stems, you make a stereo stem of just the drums, a mono stem of the guitar, mono stem of the bass. In my case, stereo of both of those because that's the way I do it. Just gave away a production secret. Anyway, and then the vocal, and you put them all on their separate tracks, right? But they're all time coded and all together. Like if you were to strip them into your DAW, they're all like a big box, right? And the reason that's really helpful is that you send it to Billy Sherwood, and he goes, okay, I'm trying to kind of get my thing together. I just want to hear the drums and the vocal. So he just mutes the bass, or I mean, the guitar, and mutes the keyboards, and he's working on. Okay, I'll bring the keys back in to see harmonically what I'm doing. Okay, well, it's just so that you can make your own mix to make it easier for you to play your parts in. So going back to what I was saying, you would think this isn't going to work because I can't tell them. I basically just gave them the stuff, gave them a brief directive of how I felt about it, what I thought I was going for, and then said this almost every time. But you have carte blanche. And then I would just shut the door and let them go. And then these stems would show up. They would send me their work back, and I'd strip it in, and it was gold. It was magic almost every time. It was like I'm going, well, this is great. I don't have to just
Yeah,
add water, makes its own gravy.
yeah.
I don't got to do anything. It was just that they're that good. They're that good that, in some cases, like something of it, or a better example would be Maude Frantic. Some of the bass lines I wrote, and he kept, Billy kept a few of the key lines, but then he wrote his own stuff in other places and brought it to another place. And then he would take the stuff that I wrote and kind of, you know, just billify it. Billify it? What? No, anyway, he just would make it really cool, right? And I would just sit there and go, now, does that mean that I didn't ever have to send something back and say, hey, can you try this? Yeah, there was a couple of times, but nothing like you would have thought it would be because you just go, this can't work. But it not only worked, but it worked incredibly well. I mean, it was as if I was there producing, and it was as if we wrote the stuff together. I can't, I don't know. Maybe the record was meant to be. I don't know, but it just
Well,
was.
one thing I wanted to ask you was when you first told me the story of this album, you said that I believe Oliver was the first one involved. Am I correct?
No, it was Adam.
Is
Adam
that okay?
Holzman.
Okay. But he saw something in it. And
Yeah.
then tell me the story how that connected to Oliver and Billy and them. Can you
Well,
tell me?
a buddy of mine, actually Harry Fix, who's on the record,
Mhm.
he sang the first part of "I'm No One," and then my voice comes in when it changes to "Hey, I'm no one." That's when I start to sing. But the first part of it is Harry. Well, Harry came back from school. He'd been going to school. I think at that time it was Occidental, but it might have been Berkeley. I can't remember. He's a very, very immensely good jazz pianist, and he had a jazz trio called the Harry Fix Trio, and I actually sat in with him one time and was nervous as hell, but I did it somehow. But he comes back from school in 2015, and we rehook up. And as I said earlier, I've been writing all these songs, and so I had demo CDs of them laying around. And he'd say, "Hey, what have you been doing lately?" And I gave him some CDs to listen to of the earlier versions, rough demo versions of the songs that are on the record now. And he just fell in love with them and said, "Hey, this stuff's great, man. I think you should do something." And he kept encouraging me to do something with it. And then one day he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, you want to go to the Steven Wilson concert in Seattle at the Showbox?" He goes, the keyboard player in Steven Wilson's band's a really good friend of mine. I went to school with him. I went to Berkeley and uh, well, I think it was Berkeley he went to with him. I don't know. Harry will have to fill in the gaps on that, but he went to school with him, and he also roadied for him in Adam's first band or school band. I don't know if it was his first band, but it was a school band called The Fence, and he roadied for Adam. And so they became really good friends. So he goes, "I've got backstage passes. We can go talk to Adam after the show." So great. And I have to make an, I have to admit something here that's, and to all you Steven Wilson fans out there, please forgive me. I was busy writing and taking care of my daughter. I was busy. I didn't know who he was.
Hey,
Sorry, I didn't know.
yeah.
Okay. Even though I had bought some of the 5.1 remixes, and you know how you read that stuff, you're reading through it, you go, Steven Wilson remix, okay, you know, didn't really know who he was. I get there and they play, and it was really good. And I was like, wow, where
Mhm.
have I been?
Mhm.
This is incredible. Loved the show. Of course, at the end of the show, we got backstage and we're talking to Adam. Great guy, really approachable, nice guy, and we're talking about stuff. And all of a sudden, Harry goes, "Hey, did you get those CDs I sent you of Kevin's stuff?"
Really?
I'm looking at him like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Yeah, I got that stuff, man. Is that you playing keyboards on there?" And Harry goes, "No, that's him." And I'm like standing there. I didn't know. I was like, "What are you talking about? What?" You know, and then he goes, "Well, did you think about, what I asked you? Could you maybe play on a couple songs for me?" He goes, "Yeah, I think I could do that. We're going we have our Japanese leg of the tour when we get back, I think I'll be able to get you something in June or July." Now, understand, I'm 65. I've been playing music for a long time in a lot of different settings, and as a studio session musician to doing audio production for film and television. I've had a lot of smoke blown up my ass over my lifetime. Okay. So I walked away from that thinking, what a nice guy. That's great that he would say that. The chances of that happening are about like not, right? I mean, I thought it was really nice, not gonna happen. July runs around. All of a sudden, I've got a wee transfer in my inbox from Adam Holzman, and it's got stems in it for two songs.
Right.
I'm like, honey, you know, you're not going to believe this. Uh, and um, and this was a moment. My wife had to leave for some reason. I can't remember why she had to leave, but the house was empty, and I put the first bit, which was only a Moog solo in the middle of 11th hour, the title track, and I sat in this room right here where I was sitting here through my Yamaha NS10s, and I'm waiting. I just had a faders up mix going, nothing real fancy, just kind of a rough mix. All of a sudden, the middle section comes in, and across my speakers comes this synth solo that I now know note for note. I could hum it to you right now. That's how well I know it because I would just sit there going, "That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah." I'm jumping up and down in here, high-fiving air. I wish I could hug someone. This
Yes.
is amazing. I couldn't believe it. I absolutely could
And
not
this is
believe it.
on what song?
On the song 11th Hour.
Okay.
It was such an amazing Moog solo, and I probably listened to it about 45 times, that one at one time, and that started everything off. Yeah, then he did more tracks on Canvas. He did Fender Rhodes, Moog, of course, organ, and Mellotron.
Mhm.
And then, he started liking what we were doing and intimated that he would do more. And I can't remember what the third song was I sent him. Um, I'd have to think about that, Kirk. Sorry, I can't remember what the third one was that I sent him. But by that time, John and I are starting to talk about the fact that we need a guitar player. That's where the Gary Green thing came in.
Yeah.
That's where I was thinking, God, if I could get Gary Green to play on this, you know. But I had an embarrassing thing. I don't know if I want the Gentle Giant fans to know, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. So we're thinking we got to get some guy that can rise to the occasion. Somebody who can play solos next to one of the world's. I mean, Adam Holzman is to the Moog right now, to some degree anyway, what Keith Emerson was, you know, in the 70s. He is like one of the world's best Moog players. That's his thing. Is you know he's a analog synth guru, and but he uh I, I get lost sometimes telling this
That's okay.
story because it's so convoluted, so in depth. But yeah, so we're thinking we got to get a guitar player and we got to get somebody that could do this. So we're talking one day and John goes, "Hey, I know this guitar player. I totally forgot. I know this guitar player named Michael Lewis, and he just got done doing and this is for you Yes fans out there. You might know of the band Inventioning. They were very short-lived. It was John Anderson from Yes and Jean-Luc Ponty from Frank Zappa and Jean-Luc Ponty. And he had just done that project with Jean-Luc Ponty and John Anderson. It was called Inventioning. And he says, "Yeah, I know this guy." "Oh, great. Is he in LA or something?" He goes, "No, he lives right out here in, between Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls," which if you're from around here, you know where that is, but it's only about 30, 40 miles. So we hook up with him. Long story, I'm trying to abbreviate this stuff. We hooked up with him, gave him the material. He fell in love with it. He started playing on it. One night, I'm sitting in here, and I had given him the song Breaking August. And I'm sitting in here, and I get a phone call. "Hello?" And it's Michael. "Hey, Kev, how would you like to have these harpsichord parts in Breaking August replaced by Oliver Wakeman?" Uh, let me think about that. Yes, yeah, yeah. He goes, "Yeah, I know a lot of the guys in the S camp, and so he put me in touch with Oliver, and Oliver heard the track and liked it and said, "Yeah, I'll do it," and you know, and so then he came on board. So now I'm thinking, wow, okay, I've got this guitar player, I got these guys. And then again, remember I told you I had the new songs I wrote? Well, I wrote Maude Frantic. And so I wrote Maude Frantic, and John and I are working on it. And one night, again, I get a phone call. It's Michael. Michael says, this song, Maude Frantic, really needs Billy Sherwood to play bass on it.
You need, you need to buy Michael a beer or something. Jeez.
Okay, are you kidding me? Yeah, right? I'll be forever. And Michael's going to see this and go, "Yes, keep the check coming in the mail." Uh, but yeah, so, it was just amazing. And I happened to be going on the cruise to the Edge boat cruise, which was primarily going to be a promotional thing for me. I was just going to network with all these great musicians, which I did. And I've got a lot of, way more stories than we could ever do in this one thing. Uh, but I was about to go on that, and I talked to Billy on the phone a couple of times, had a couple of emails, and said, "Yeah, we'll hook up on the boat." I saw him on the boat, and I was so nervous, Kirk. Man, I was if I don't know if I could use I'll use this language. I was about ready to crap bullets. I was just
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, this is one of my heroes. This is a guy," and truthfully, I could not think of anything to say, and then it suddenly hit me. I'm just going to tell him the truth. And I walked right up to him and I said, "Hi, Billy, I'm Kevin. I know that Michael put me in touch with you. I just want you to know I really love your work on both sides of the glass." I thought that was a good way to start things off. "Well, thank you. Thank you very." Of course, he's not English, so, "Well, thank you very much." Well, he doesn't sound like that either. But anyway, so we talked for just a few minutes and then got the information going there, and that's how he got on board. So that's kind of the story. And then I became friends with him, and he made some suggestions. Then at the Yes Show last October at the Paramount in Seattle, I I got to hang out with him a little bit. And we were talking, and he goes, "That first song that you sent me, that Maude Frantic song." He goes, I don't know, man. That song was tough. I had to really work hard on that one." And he goes, "Do you ever land on a time signature?" And he was kidding, of course. Well, yeah, I do, I think. And and I still think that's funny. But he goes, "No, no," And then he goes, "But that second song, uh, Weight and Matter." He goes, "That was a little more groove oriented." He goes, "I just really got into that one. I really enjoyed playing that one." So
Well, I want to say this, Kevin. It's kind of like this. I think this album was meant to be, and I think one of the connecting factors. Billy Sherwood's a Gentle Giant fan.
Yes.
Anybody involved with Steven Wilson, you know they're going to dig Gentle Giant. You had that in your kind of heart and soul. It's like because you were exposed to that, because you brought that in so much. I think it kind of comes out in this album. There's counterpoint singing, there's a Baroque section. Um, there's just so much. I think that if Gentle Giant doesn't always say this sounds like Gentle Giant, they can see the influences. I think
Yeah.
that's, but I also think that because these people, I want people to know this about this album. This isn't a guy looking for a buck. Let's get some guys together and make an album. This isn't a Yes project. This isn't anything else. This was something that you started, and that's not uncommon. Advent, they're working on an album. Their last one was 9 years ago. They had one 9 years before that. These projects take a lot of time, especially when you're working remote. It's a lot of
Absolutely.
sending files and so on. But I think the thing of it is it struck me. These people saw something. They heard something in this. Like, I want to be a part of this. And you don't sit in the drum cage behind Billy Sherwood and Oliver Wakeman for no reason. You've got drum. You bring it to the drums, okay? But in the
Yeah.
writing, everything in this, I think people are going to see this as something special. I want to go through the just so people know.
Well, thank you.
This the Maude Frantic, A Question of Weight and Matter, which has to be it's kind of tied or fighting places as my favorite of a couple on this album. Canvas is wonderful. I'm no one. It's like it's so personal. 11th Hour is great. Breaking August is really going to connect with a lot of Giant fans. Something of it is it's something else. Okay, Sisters is something personal to you. Boat Five. I love this album, and I hope people will give this a chance. I know that there's been several people on the Gentle Giant fan site when they heard who's going to be on this album, they're immediately interested. And I think because you're a Gentle Giant fan, I think that's another thing that's going to connect. But I can say this: if you like Peter Gabriel's singing, you're going to like Kevin singing. If you like Happy the Man, Genesis, yes, Gentle Giant, this is going to click with you. I can't say enough about it. I wouldn't be on this interview, talking about this for an hour plus if it wasn't really great. So, I mean, I want to thank you for being on this, Kevin.
Oh,
Uh,
my
I've got to,
pleasure.
I've got to,
Absolutely.
I'm going to bring this to a close, but
Hey, but before you bring it to a close, I
no,
want to say that
sure.
you have the I don't know how much of a special thing it is, but maybe it will be. You're the first guy to interview me. You're the first for this campaign for the release of this record. We have Mod Frantic is going to debut j- September 4th on Progressive Musings with Ken Slater on Progzilla. And so
Wow.
that's going to be like the first time that one of the songs is actually heard out there. And then pretty shortly thereafter, we're going to drop the video because Crystal Spotlight, who I'm working with, they also represent Stephen Wilson and Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull and a bunch of other people, Dream Theater, and they're uh, his brother, Rob's brother, Miles Scarron, is doing the videos, and he's the guy who did the video for Impossible Tightrope off of the Codex out. I always forget the new Steven Wilson record.
Sure.
God, that's terrible. You forget Steven Wilson's record title. You no.
For
Anyway,
somebody that's been in obscure, that knows what obscurity was like, I think they can forgive you. So
okay, Hope. Thank you. I have a lot of things going through the old brain pan here.
that's okay. Anyway,
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that you're the first that you're the first that's opening up the can of worms, if you will. And and I've really enjoyed doing this with you, and I hope we can do it again. And
well, do,
again, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, and also, Kirk is being really. I want you fans out there to know This guy is being very generous. He's given me connections with other people in the prog rock community, and I'm trying to introduce myself now to the prog rock community. And so, with his help, it's just people be so many people being so nice to me and helping me with this record. It's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming. And thank you very much. Anyone who buys the record, hears the music, and it touches you, thank you. That's all I can say about
Well,
that.
you know what? I'll say this, and we'll end this. You know, when you meet a Gentle Giant fan, you meet a brother, you meet a
That's
sister,
right.
and I've met so many friends, and that's the connecting thing. It's like, you know, you become a Giant fan and you be part of a community. I'm going to wrap this up, but you know, this has been great, Kevin. I've really enjoyed this. I'm excited about the opening in October, and you said September 4th. We're going to hear a video. You're going to see links to everything here, the madrigalproject.com on this video, and be sure to check out the Waiting and On Your Hands. It's on this YouTube channel as well. Thank
Just
you,
make sure
guys.
you buy the compilation record. Don't buy
Buy
one of
the buy the Waiting on Your Hands compilation.
right.
Well, as
It's
they
a better
say,
way to get it anyway because you can only get it digitally and it's like 10 something, 10 something like that, or maybe it's a little more than that. But you get the digital version, you get all this, and there's three songs on there that have never been released that I wrote. One's called And Should, which is just me and an acoustic guitar. And one's called Paper Cups, and one's called Master or Slave. Now, I should give a little thing about this. They were recorded on the 8 track, and they weren't. I couldn't. I couldn't really get the production the way I want them, so I'm re-recording right now, Master or Slave, because I think it's a great song, and I want to get it recorded properly. So there you go. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the.
no, that's fine. This, you know, like I said, you're a genuine person, and you've been a great guy to talk to on the phone these 9 months, and I'm looking forward to the release of this album. So, hey, we'll talk again, Kevin. For all you out there, thanks for joining Giant Chat. Long live the Giant.